I am so thrilled. One of our good friends we get to have in studio. Did you bring some free pies?
Oh, I forgot this time, fellas. Sorry. I should have done that.
Well, thanks for joining us today. I'm sure you're very busy and you got to run. James Sharman, ladies and gentlemen, in the studio as we get ready to talk about a World Cup where
starts up next week.
We're gonna have a World Cup pool too, so you got to join in.
Oh, I'm in.
You got to join in that.
Yeah.
And so instead of getting right off the top to some of the favorites, and I think there are some ones that are clearly. At least in this World Cup, sometimes you struggle with it. I don't know how much I'm struggling with what I think is going to be at least into the semis. I really don't see these teams messing up. But let's go through the group. Now, obviously, Russia is there because they are hosting. Otherwise,
that's the only way they're there.
There's no way in hell
they got a
that
cupcake
team gets there.
division too.
I've been. It's the easiest group.
Yes.
And that's so unlike Russia to do things like this,
isn't it?
And
listen.
And FIFA to be unfair.
Isn't it odd?
I thought for sure they were going to be with Germany and Argentina, but they're not.
But I knew they were very average. But then reading and listening to a lot of Russian journalists the last couple of weeks, they are saying this is going to be an unparalleled disaster from their team. They are that bad.
Okay, let me ask you this: is it feasible in your mind that Saudi Arabia or Egypt maybe throw a tie in there against Russia?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
it could happen. Because that would be a big failure right there.
Well, let's be honest here. This is a World Cup. This is a host nation. This is Vladimir Putin. You often see the home nations getting calls, getting controversial, scandalous non-calls or calls. Is that beyond this group? No, of course not. That could happen. That could be their one salvation because, obviously Uruguay is by far a million miles the best team in that group.
Yes.
Saudi Arabia are not great, but certainly they could give Russia a real run. And Egypt have the star power, which Russia doesn't have. So, I think it might be a surprise to see Russia even get out of this group.
Wow.
What I think is interesting is, you're looking at someone who actually has and does watch the African Cup of Nations. Why? I gamble on it. What else? And here's a little bit of advice. Just take the under. Because goals are not their friend. But what I find with a lot of the African nations is they have these crazy athletes. And so look, the top ones, if it's Cote d'Ivoire or you're going to see Kaká and a lot of these names that Touré, like the elite guys who go and play in the big leagues. But for the most part, they have tremendous skills, athletic skills, but not the finish. They make these incredible plays and have real difficulty when it comes to putting the ball in the net.
We've been expecting an African team to have a breakout World Cup forever, right? And it really hasn't happened. Ghana did pretty well. Ivory Coast, Cameroon have some great moments, but not for a while now. This time around, it's the North African nations. Morocco's in there, Tunisia, and of course Egypt. And you're right, goal scoring's been the issue. But looking at Egypt in this group, they have Mohamed Salah. Now, Mohamed Salah has been arguably the best player in world football the last 12 months, but...
Is he healthy?
That's the question, right? He did his shoulder in the Champions League final, courtesy Sergio Ramos and that whole controversy. Is he healthy? It's a separation, and the separations, I've done that a number of times to my shoulder over the years. There's different degrees. That they say he had a 3-week window to recover, which bodes well. But is he going to be 100%? I don't know. But without him, they've got issues because he was the dominant goal scorer. I think over 70% of their goals in qualifying came from that guy, Salah.
Now, let's just interject there before we continue with World Cup because it brought up. What was your feeling, and not necessarily the Champions League, but when we look at the Prem.
Liverpool fan, by the way.
Where
and
unabashed.
And Man City won, I think, halfway through the season, I believe.
Yeah, pretty much. I think it was November, wasn't it?
It was just an absolute machine, and I think of years back, at least for me. So because I really don't understand footy until about 2001. That's kind of where that's literally where started. So that's when
you missed the golden years, Mike.
Yeah, wow.
The 80s.
If you're an Arsenal fan, I think that was a golden year. I don't think they lost for like 2 years or whatever it was. And I take a look at where they have come from, and of course, look, a lot of it's tied to money. It's going to be very difficult to win in any of these leagues if you don't have, I don't know, a Russian oligarch,
Middle Eastern royal family.
Yeah, exactly where it comes from. But just how good is this Man City team? Are we looking at 2, 3, 4 years? Because it's very difficult because, again, you've got to keep the players that got you there.
Yeah.
That's easier said than done.
I think it's a dynasty We're on the cusp of a dynasty here. They're a young team. They have some aging players who they'll replace and they'll buy, replacements, obviously. But this is a team that's dominated by Kevin De Bruyne, who's in his mid-20s.
He's fantastic, really is.
Jesus, who's I think 20 at this point. He's going to be a dominant striker for years to come. Their goalkeeper Edison's a young mid-20s goalkeeper. Throughout that team, you got a great blend of youth and veterans, but the youth are experienced. Unlike a lot of teams, the kids come through, they're learning their way. But these young players have experience playing in big games, big tournaments, both domestically and internationally. So I don't see a team catching them in the near future. Now, United will probably close the gap somewhat. This year was a complete one-man show in the Prem. Liverpool looks pretty good right now. Will Chelsea spend? Tough to say. But the gap will close somewhat, but 20 points is a big gap to close, and they won't do it next year.
A lot we're making of in the final, obviously the goalkeeper for Liverpool, and people were I saw with the memes and so on. I thought, are you kidding me? In what is one of the world's most singularly watched event, in what is the highest level of that sport, in the sport that is the most played in the world, and they thought that it was. I don't know if you say not cool, but it was embarrassing that he would cry. I got to tell you something. I don't know how he didn't start doing it halfway through the game, because it wasn't about him. It wasn't about him going, oh, look what happened to me. He was humiliated, the fact that he thought he had let down all the Scousers, all the fans, all his teammates, in what is a moment that will live almost in infamy. It will be very difficult to not have this shown around the world several times, and I thought, he took full accountability. He never ran from it. He didn't come up with any, because the first one that he tries to throw out. I mean, I don't know if you do it 10 times more. I don't know if it goes in one more time.
Is he a lot of luck in that as well, or bad luck as it were?
The last one that goes through the hands, which was Gareth, right?
Gareth
Bale.
Gareth Bale.
Yeah.
Which that was great. And then the second goal. I don't think anyone's that
the
bicycle
first one
kick
might be
was just
greatest goal you'll ever see in a final.
I really thought it was brilliant,
right.
but I thought it was really unfair to people to say, "Why would you cry?"
Well, I think it's funny because this is soccer, right?
Yeah.
These players cry when they get subbed off, right? It's not hockey, people, and that's all right. It's different. These are emotionally fragile human beings, that they play on the edge, and that whole situation, that the plot thickens this past week because the Massachusetts General Hospital came out with a statement saying they were visited by Loris Karius 4 days after the final. He went through in-depth concussion testing, and they, by their findings, say he had a serious concussion earlier in that game. Now there's numerous layers to this story, isn't there? Number one is, why is he going by himself? This is not a sanctioned testing by the club or by UEFA. So why did he go there? Okay, if he was concussed, I get why he wants to get out there. Doesn't look good maybe in the short term, but he made two, like you said, monumental mistakes.
Never seen it at that
If he can
level.
now say, well, actually, I was concussed.
But see, he never said that. So if the hospitals come out and saying that, at least which is, again, how can they just come out and say that when the individual himself did not?
Yeah, well, precisely. But he's maybe going through the hospital, saying, please put this statement out to make me look better.
Yes.
At the same time, how was it not caught at the time on the field? There's medical staff, highly trained medical staff, who should have seen a serious concussion at the time. Right? Why did he stay in the game if he was concussed?
And we never talk that when it comes to footy. We don't necessarily talk about
soccer
concussions.
is so far behind concussion protocols compared to hockey, football now, and other sports. It really is. I mean, you see it all the time. Players going off, and you can see that they're swaying, and they'll give a good little shake it off and get back out there on the field. So soccer is definitely behind in that regard. But that whole career situation, just to me, it's fascinating. And given what's happened this past week, and what does that mean for his future? Will the club be upset by him going by himself behind their backs?
Sure.
Who, in terms of goalkeeping, what do you think they will do?
I can't see them keeping him. I mean, if he walks, it doesn't look good on him. You have to own this. And in fairness, he has owned it from the first minute he goes, it was on me. I give him respect for that. Can he be their number one next year? I doubt it. The rumours are they're going after some big targets. Allison at Roma, about £70 million with the goalkeeper there. Jan Oblak at Atletico Madrid. So that they haven't addressed the goalkeeping issues for a long time at Liverpool. And it cost them big time this time around, concussion or otherwise.
Yeah. World Cup-wise, before we get to some of the groups and some of the names, teams, etc., biggest disappointment that isn't there. Do you have a one country in particular? Because
I
could name 4.
Well, you
Yeah,
got to
yeah.
be careful, depending on who's watching. Like I know who I always say. It's a shame that Italy isn't in it because hey, take it easy.
Well, of course, and on this show, I'm very sad that Ireland's not there, Mike.
You know what? Even Jesus himself said. Danish.
Honestly, for me, I mean, listen, we're going to miss Italy. You know, they are in many ways they transcend the game.
Yes.
You know, but once you kick off, you're not going to miss anyone. Chile's the one I'm going to miss.
Really?
Just
Okay.
because they play such a great style of football. They're beautiful to watch. They attack, they score goals. They got such passion when they play, and they've been the dominant South American team for 2 years, winning Copa Americas. And they didn't make it. It's a big surprise. I think they were just fatigued from playing so much soccer the last number of years. But their coach, Jorge Sampaoli, is now in charge of Argentina, which really bodes well for Argentina. It's a very clever manager. He'll try different things.
It's interesting because people don't talk about that. People rarely talk about fatigue in soccer, and you have to realize for some of the nationals, whether they're playing domestically or playing over in one of the big European leagues, and then of course within there you have sometimes 2 or 3 cups. I mean, you could be playing constantly. That's why I think that 1 year where I think Spain won every kind of cup. If it was girls under the age of 10, they won everything. And at some point, the cycle's got to catch up with you somewhere.
Even look at Toronto FC, for example, this year.
Yeah,
Prime
absolutely.
example, right?
Yeah,
They finished December 10th, I think was the final last year, December 9th around there. They're back in camp in January. They're playing meaningful Champions League games in February. And lo and behold, they've got all these injuries now, which is derailing their season at the moment. So, of course, these guys need rests. You look at Chilean Alexis Sanchez, who's one of the world's best players, plays for Manchester United now, was for Arsenal. He's missing this summer, and it's the best thing for him. He has played so much football the last number of years. He's had no summers off in 4 years. So he plays pretty much 12 months of the year, close to, for 4 straight years. And you see him this past season genuinely fatiguing. And you've got to give these guys breaks. It's why English football is discussing a winter break in their schedule. Every other league has it except for England. And you wonder why England struggles at World Cups?
Yeah.
There's numerous reasons.
Yeah.
One of which is the fact they're knackered.
Yeah.
By the time you kick off, they're so tired. There's been no break.
As much as I know people like to pound on Ronaldo, he must be a robot.
He's a machine.
Because he never doesn't play.
And he demands to play. I mean, they have, in fairness, Zidane's cut down his playing time a little bit the last couple of years, but not dramatically. But he doesn't play against all the whipping boys in La Liga. But he says biologically he's 23 years of age. By what he does, he is
like it is
cryo
amazing.
chamber. It is, yeah. He goes, I can play till I'm 41. Which I think is funny because in which case he was scoring 30 goals in England when he was 9 years old.
Like in comparison for people to understand, he literally he's their Tom Brady. He gets the supermodels.
Yep.
He gets the whatever.
Yeah. He gets whatever he wants, you know, and he does. He just wins, and he's evolved. He's changed his game. That's why I respect him so much. He used to be this rampaging winger who would beat you 1-on-1 with all the tricks, all the flicks. This time, the last couple of years, he's lost a bit of pace. He's not going to beat you 1-on-1. He won't try and beat you 1-on-1 all the time, but he'll play more of a central forward type figure, and you won't see him all game, but then you'll look at the stat sheet, he's got 2 goals or a couple of assists. He's really changed the way he approaches the game, and I give him respect for that.
Yeah.
Now, at Sports Interaction, they have Germany as the favorites. They have Brazil coming in the number 2 spot, and then it's a little bit of a log jam because you have teams like Portugal, France, Belgium's in the conversation, Argentina's in the conversation. I don't want to necessarily talk about the superpowers. I want a surprise team or two that might even get past the group stage and people are sitting there going, that wasn't supposed to happen. Are there teams out there like that?
There are. I mean, what is a dark horse in soccer, right? It's different. If you're so close to the game like I am, you're not really that surprised by too many clubs. But from a general standpoint, a team like Uruguay, who are in a really weak group, they've been very good in South America for a number of years. They've enjoyed this golden generation, which is now evolving into another generation. You look at their group, in that Group A with Saudi Arabia and Russia. You look at their team with Luis Suarez, who we all know about from the previous couple of World Cups. Very controversial, but absolutely brilliant.
Does he order your meat pies? Because
he makes them actually. I don't ask what's in the pies.
You got a pitch man for that, for sure.
But I mean, this is a guy that brings something every World Cup, right? 2010, he had that infamous handball off the line against Ghana as a goalkeeping save, got sent off, but saved his team, Ulster, and then he bit, of course, Chiellini 4 years ago. Him and Cavani up front for Uruguay, arguably the best strike partnership in the World Cup. At the back, you got Godin and Jimenez, who is the Atletico Madrid's starting centre-halves, maybe the best defence in Europe. That's a team that no one's really talking about, but they might make a real run. And in Uruguay, they believe they can win this thing. So that's a team,
that's
certainly.
huge. Yeah.
And they're fun to watch. Croatia. I mean, Croatia's a team that have let us down in the past.
Pink
There's
33-1 at one time, yeah.
Yeah, issues off the field there. But that midfield is as good as any midfield in the World Cup at the moment. So
And they'll grind it out. I mean, it's not necessarily the prettiest ball you're going to see in the world.
maybe not, no, exactly.
Yeah.
But they'll find a way through. But I just don't see that tiny team. I don't see that Cameroon from 1986.
Sure.
I don't see that South Korea from 2002.
We're not going to see Iceland in
No,
Euros.
let's hope not.
No, I
I said before, Dave. You know this. I'm done with you. I'm done with that narrative in Iceland. My God, well done, nice tournament. You are awful to watch.
yeah. And by the way,
We'll
Ted
watch
Nesbitt,
the
the
Disney
Viking,
movie.
Ted Nesbitt from Blade Tape. We're not talking about your stinking Iceland weirdo Viking, whatever goes on up there, or Bjork. We don't want to hear about it. But let's pound on Group C for a while, because they have two of the teams I obviously hate. France, number 1, Thierry Henry, and you know why about that. And also Denmark, who didn't invent the Danish. Can you believe that? A bunch of fucking liars is what they are.
Who did invent the Danish?
I think it was the Jews.
Was it?
You do, eh?
Denmark, although they do have some stars and some great players. France is just annoying.
Yeah.
The Austria, what do they call themselves? What's the nickname
The
for
The
Socceroos.
Socceroos.
Oh God. Okay, I'm not for
I don't think. I think out of that
I might
group,
like Peru out of that group.
You're not Peru. Okay, there you go. There's your team.
Really? You see them at number 2. You see them at number 2 because France is obviously number 1 in that group.
Quite possibly. Peru is a team that the last probably 3 or 4 years have just reinvented themselves. They were the whipping boys of South America for a long time.
Well, look how small. I mean, do you think like in terms of money? Where are you developing players in little Peru?
Just within that soccer culture, right?
Crazy.
And if you're good enough in Peru, you're going to get a chance in some big leagues in South America. But they're a team that have really come in a long, long way. Very, very hard to beat. And they got Paulo Guerrero back this past week. He was banned for a cocaine infraction. Banned for a number of months. Was going to miss the World Cup. FIFA, don't ask me why. You probably know why. Said, you know what? We'll delay that a little bit, and we'll address that after the World Cup now. But without him, they're a very different team. He's their top goal scorer. He could be fun to watch. So Peru in that group might be the one to watch out for. But you're right. I mean, France is the team to beat. But they're also the team that could implode in this World Cup. They've done it before, right?
Yes,
In
yeah.
a couple of World Cups.
Under different management too.
Sure,
at the time,
sure.
right?
But Domenech isn't very liked
Right.
with that team. There's a lot of big egos. If they can stay happy, they might be the deepest squad at this World
Yeah,
Cup.
but the French, they
don't often stay happy. I know.
Okay, just sidetracking on France, and we hear about Zidane at Real Madrid and so forth. Do you see maybe Zidane one day taking over the national program?
I think it's
Is he
almost a
leaving?
dead cert.
Is he leaving?
Oh, yeah.
Is he leaving?
Oh, he
Real
is
Madrid?
leaving.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's done.
So it's gone.
He's quit, and I think this would be the perfect job for him. An
It would,
international job.
wouldn't
You're
it?
not working that hard, right? And he's an
No.
interesting guy.
And
He's got
he's
other
a god
interests.
in the country.
Absolutely. There are players already talking about, when Zizou takes over. They're looking past this World Cup, which is
Interesting.
very frightening,
Yeah,
right?
that's not good.
The fans are
Don't
certainly
bet on
saying this is
France.
Zidane. Look at the youth here. It's Zidane's team after this World
Yes,
Cup. Now,
yes.
Domenech, if he wins, good for him. He might stick around.
Just don't say something about his family, because you're getting that bald head right in the chest.
Exactly. It's so sad that we still remember him for that.
I'll
eh?
never forget.
You know?
I have never, because I wouldn't even think of that move. Like Dave says something that does it. Like I just
no, exactly.
I was in Calgary watching this thing, and I'm sitting there watching it, and you have to realize that I would think the common smack talk, let's forget about all the things that we're not supposed to say and all the things that are against society. On the pitch like that, who knows what's being said? But the one thing that my mother, if I have a sister, my daughter, I just all going to be fodder. And the guy who is the equivalent of what would he be in football in terms of world soccer? Is he that we'd understand in North America? Is he Gretzky?
He's
Mario Lemieux?
He's Mario, I think.
He's Mario, right?
In that if we assume Gretzky's the best, I know it's debatable, right? But he's kind of the iconic figure of Canadian. Canadian hockey. Zidane is perhaps just a little bit below Maradona and Pele, maybe Messi and Ronaldo, but he's
Mario.
Next. He's Mario.
Yeah, so he's
Zidane's
Mario. So I wouldn't see Mario in the where you're because you're going to cost your team everything by doing what you're going to do, and the move that it was, just seeing that bald head just rut him
in
like
the
a
modern
ram.
era, it's the iconic image of soccer, isn't it? I think in the modern era, that's
I would say
image.
that.
I mean, forget Ronaldo lifting the World Cup above his head, Gascoigne's tears, the 7-1 Brazil Germany game last.
Right.
I think that picture. That's the iconic moment of Zidane just losing the plot against Marco Materazzi in 2006 in a game that France should have won. They were the better team.
Yes.
And he let his team down. But I love Zizou. You know, there was no one better, in my opinion, in the big game. And a great quote from one of the players, I forget who it was now. He said, you know, when things are going awry and we're losing it, we just give the ball to Zizou. He takes care of it.
The only thing wrong with him,
I love that.
The only thing wrong with him, his suit pants are about that much too short.
That's the new fashion.
It's Europe.
That's
it's
Dave.
Europe.
Listen,
No, it is.
It is. I saw our stylist at Sportsnet last week, and she goes, "That's the style." And I said, "Really? I've got great ankles, so I'm fine with that."
Well, you're lucky.
You go over to Italy and they go, "Well, how come guys are only wearing one pant leg?" obviously, you don't know. I'm like, oh, okay,
I don't
whatever.
know. You're right.
I got a baseball cap on backwards. What are you talking to me for?
When you're comparing Group C, and you know we talked about France, and then we're not sure exactly who we have advancing. Would you almost make the same comparison in Group E, where we like Brazil to probably win the group outright, but are you making a case for Serbia? Are you making a case for Switzerland? A lot of people are saying Switzerland in that category, but is it as close as we think? Or
I think it is. It's a real close fight, that one. Costa Rica is a team that might just rise above it. They had a good World Cup last time.
There's another one, yeah.
Yeah, they're a good defensive team. They play in CONCACAF, which wasn't the toughest way to qualify.
Right.
But generally speaking, they're tough physical encounters. So, you know, Switzerland have some star power there, obviously. They got Xherdan Shaqiri, who's great and is really good for his country. And
the betting favorite to finish number 2, by the way. The betting favorite is
Switzerland? Is it? Yes. Yeah. So, you know, it's tough to argue that, but Serbia is that, you know, lying in the weeds. You know, they've let us down the last number of years. They didn't qualify last time out, but they're a really, really good team with some real stars, especially in the midfield there as well. So Serbia, I'm sure, are happy to be the underdogs in that group. They might surprise a lot of people and pip Switzerland and Costa Rica to the second place.
Now, when I look at sort of what happens in world football, I usually just look to the domestic leagues. And so when we start looking where the shortcomings are in certain in terms of national blood, that's why I take a look at England, because I'm looking at the biggest clubs, and they generally are not going to be an English name that is their star. Where the Bundesliga, La Liga, you know, you look at even to a degree Liga, but for the most, you know, I'm taking a look at Spain and Germany, and their stars are their stars.
Yeah, they're mainly based there. Whereas England, the Premier League's got, I think, 35% English players now in it.
It's down to 35.
Yeah, 35 around there.
And how as that national blood is really the foundation of anyone's program. When I look at Brazil, and I hear all this talk about Brazil, I know almost, and I don't even bet on it. I know. I don't even bet on Brazilian football. I don't know a lot about it, but as Dave said, well, yeah, but most of the top Brazilian guys are overplaying somewhere in Europe. But what have they done to right that wrong that was a disaster last time?
Yeah, well, I mean, Brazil is just, they produce so many footballers, right? They can have a fantastic league at home, stacked full of Brazilians, and then have the very, very best making their way to Europe. And that's what happens. They got enough depth. I think there's more Brazilians playing outside of their country, their home country, than any other nation has, right? But they were very average in qualifying until Tite took over, the new manager. He redesigned the way they played, redeveloped it. We know they have great attack. They've always had good defense as well. Now the midfield is caught up as well. They got youth on that side as well, but they have this wonderful creative team. It's the old Brazil again. For a number of years, Brazil may have been a decent team at World Cups, but they played a very un-Brazil type, especially under Dunga, who was fired during qualifying, replaced by Tite. Now they're attacking again. You have Neymar, who we think's healthy. He scored a great goal last week in his return from that broken foot. You have Jesus up front, you know, the number 9. You have Philippe Coutinho of Barcelona and Liverpool fame. They're just solid from 1 through 11. And it's not, you know, the toughest group for them either. So they can hit the field running and sprinting, and if they're not in the semi-finals, is a huge surprise. They should be second or third favorites.
Interesting.
Group F, so Germany, Mexico, Sweden, Korea. That's pretty competitive. Although Germany, I don't know how many people are in their category, to be honest. And when I take a look at teams like, well, I should say pretty competitive. Mexico has such skill sets.
And they know how to party too.
Apparently.
Yeah.
Allegedly.
Yeah. but God bless them. I mean, they're the most amazing people under 5'7" or what. If you watch their professional league, if you're watching, you know, it does the beach soccer that they have down there. Everything is played with pace, and their skills are outrageously good. But the problem I always find with them is even in a Sweden or a Germany, or you're talking about Brazil, once they get in the box, and people don't think,
right?
yeah, and people don't think soccer's physical. Well, you're dwarfed by those other countries. I just don't know how they truly get to that next level, because physically, unless they start producing.
Yeah, some big guys up front to mix up the way they can play.
I don't know how they get further than they normally end up doing.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, they usually make a bit of noise at the World Cup. They're usually very good in the group phase, and then they'll bow out in the round of 16, maybe a quarterfinal. But again, they're a good team this time around. They got some youth coming through there as well. In this kid, Herving Lozano, PSV. He's been there the last year. I think he scored 17 goals. He's a very young player. He's going to be, one for the future. Maybe one of those breakthrough players of this World Cup. And he's not your typical, prototypical, tiny, striker.
Mm-hmm.
He's got more of a physical approach to him. Chicharito's still there. He's not tiny, and he's succeeded in European leagues. Not a great past year, mind you, in the Premier League. But Mexico's certainly a dark horse to get to a quarterfinal. But it's all about the way, you match up in the bracket, right? And with those four powerhouses in France, Spain, Brazil, and Germany, all looking as if they're going to make it to the semi-finals, you're going to get some pretty good matchups in the quarterfinals and round of 16, and some good teams going out, because I don't see any of those, outside those four teams, a team making too much noise at this World Cup.
Now, you mentioned PSV. So, PSV, Ajax, like a lot of the... So, no Netherlands.
Yeah.
And I look at the you go back, not that long, but I'd say 10 years ago, where they were always like the sexy pick.
Mm-hmm.
Here comes that team, blonde dreadlocks, black glasses. I mean, they kind of were their worst enemy at the time,
swagger,
because
didn't
they did have a swagger, and I think sometimes that was their downfall. I think maybe a little more businesslike might have been a good thing. And now they're not even in the World Cup. And I just think, for one of the great football nations, what is going on?
I think a lot of clubs and nations caught up with them. They were for the longest time the best at developing youth. And, Johan Cruyff, of course, at Barcelona fame, he developed a system of play which the Dutch embraced, that 4-3-3, total football. And Ajax and PSV and these teams, these great development academies which preached that. And then everyone looked at that and go, yeah, well, why don't we do that as well? And so you're seeing a lot more clubs doing that now and developing their own players. And so you're seeing the Dutch league drop a little lower and lower and lower. They can't compete financially with England or Germany or Spain or Italy, right? Just can't do it, right? So they lose their players at a young age as well. So it's a real shame, because you're right. The Dutch are always fun to watch at World Cups. Either they're brilliant or they will completely implode. It's one or the other.
That's right.
It's never like, oh, it's good round of 16 World Cup, well done. It's like, oh, God, that was horrible. What happened? Or, man, they should win this thing. They could win it. You know, it's incredible.
Extremes.
Extremes. Yeah, you're right. And you're right. I love Ruud Gullit, the dreadlocked in the 80s. One of my favorites of all time. Just so much fun. Marco van Basten. Maybe the most. He retired at 27. He's like Kurt Cobain. The 27, that age. He blew it all then, because he could have been so good, but did his knee. They've produced so much talent over the years.
The Van Nistelrooys.
Yeah,
of the
exactly.
Era time.
Patrick Kluivert, his son is coming through the ranks now. Very, very good. So there is a wealth of talent. Just not there just yet.
Interesting. I'm writing all the previews for Sports Interaction on their website. I talked to you about it. I talked to a number of my other friends that cover, the world game. Poland, Senegal, Colombia, Japan. The premise of what I get from a lot of people is, okay, Japan's finishing fourth.
Yeah.
Period.
100%.
But then after that, I had people tell me Poland's the best team in that group. I had people tell me Colombia's the betting favorite, by the way, on Sports Interaction. And then people were sitting there going, Senegal is the type of team that will beat Japan, tie Poland, beat Colombia, or tie Colombia, beat Poland, and sneak in as well.
They could be the banana skin, right?
Yes,
for
exactly.
these teams, for sure. Senegal, really balanced team, but their coach, Cisse, very inexperienced. A lot of people question his tactics.
Right.
So that could be and it's a very tactical game, the international game, right? But you're right. So for me, it comes down to Poland and Colombia and that group. Poland, they're got the veterans there. Lewandowski is probably the best all-out number 9 in world football.
Yeah, led
He's
in qualification goals.
Yeah, they got some really good experience.
Is he at Dortmund still? Where is he now?
He's at Bayern Munich for now,
Oh,
but he wants
Bayern,
out
yeah.
apparently.
Right.
So Real Madrid is sniffing around. He's really good. They've got a lot of youth coming through Poland as well at the moment. So they're a real good dark horse pick to do well in this tournament. Colombia too. I mean, Colombia's a team that, man, they look so good often in group phases, then they'll just crumple in the big games.
Yeah,
Well, they've got a history of failing.
They're just afraid to go home.
Yeah, that might be what it is. So stay longer then in that case. Stay as long as possible. But again, it's their mentality. They have the talent. We understand.
So a guy like James Rodriguez for Colombia, is he what he was last World Cup? Because it was kind of his. Here I am. I'm in the soccer world party.
He was maybe the standout player, wasn't he?
Exactly. Does he still have that right now? Because the last number of years we haven't seen that same player.
He got the big move to Real Madrid, right? Because they usually snap up the biggest player at the World Cup, right? And then
how much money did they have?
It's never ending. Although in fairness, the last 2 or 3 years under Zidane, they haven't spent that much. They've kept the same nucleus. It's probably going to change.
But they cost them like the space program.
Yeah, right. But James, but he went to Real Madrid and really didn't do that well. He had his moments, but didn't do too well. And then he got this move to Bayern Munich on loan this past season. Was it on loan? I forget now.
I think it was on loan. Yes,
but
a 2-year loan.
Yeah,
too,
right.
Yeah.
And he's had a breakout campaign. He's been back to what he was. He's been superb, not just scoring goals, but assisting as well. So he's back to where he should be, and he's at one again to really watch at this World Cup, along with Falcao just above him in their formation, who's had a very good season
team,
as well at Monaco. Yeah, exactly. So Colombia are good, and I have them playing England in the round of 16.
So then you have Colombia finishing first and England finishing second.
Correct. In that
you
group,
and
then
you
Poland,
have Belgium and Poland.
Yeah, which is a good matchup as well.
That's a really good match.
But again, I've got a history of failing miserably in pools,
no,
so don't worry about my picks.
You're still banking on your Greece Euro prediction from
absolutely,
ago. Come
man,
on
2004.
If you're a British fan though, I mean, is there just kind of not eye rolling, but the team, there's your national team. They come on the pitch and it's like, oh, here we go.
You know what? I think this time around.
Do you think there's a little more positive?
No, it's not positive. It's great. It's actually very low expectations for once. And we saw a little bit of this 4 years ago. It wasn't the golden generation that had gone away, and it's a build for the future. I think a lot of people thought 4 years ago they'd be further ahead than they are now. But they got a new coach in place, Gareth Southgate, who's actually very progressive. He's changed things completely. He's really building through the youth grade programs, U17s, U20s, who won the World Cup the last 2 years. Finally, England have some good youth teams. Now, can their players play full-time for their big clubs? That's a big question mark there. But this team especially is very, very young. He's got one eye certainly on the future. But with no expectations, there's far less pressure on this England team than there ever has been in my memory. They could be a dark horse to do well. Now, they're not going to win it, but a quarterfinal, I think, is quite possible if they play a Colombia, for example.
Pretty good achievement too.
If they get a quarterfinal, man, there'll be parades in the street.
Yeah,
Trust me,
huge.
It'll be like, wow, finally, thank you, Gareth, you got this team playing together. They could also implode and blow it in the first round, right? But I really, people laugh at me because I always get too excited before a World Cup. I lose my pragmatism and I'm like, oh, actually, this is a pretty good team. They could do well, right? I actually think this team will do okay. They won't embarrass themselves, but if they reach the quarterfinals, fantastic. If it's a round of 16 lost to Colombia, okay, that's okay.
Right.
Sure.
Euro in 2 years could be a different story.
I think as long as they see the lads go out there, play their best ball, and get beaten by a better team, I think they'll be fine with it.
Just don't play beneath yourself for once. Go out well. Right, and that's I think all England fans ask for, and they've got some relatively likable characters now in that team, which is isn't often the case.
Well, if I'm taking a look now at the top four, and I haven't really to a degree gone through and said, okay, here's what I see, and coming out of the pools. I just take a look, at least from my perspective, and watching the footy that I watch in the countries that I see that play great football. So to me, and I said, and this is no in particular order on how they get there, but if I'm seeding them. I got Germany 1. I just see what they have. I look at their how they have grown up in the last, these young guys in the last, let's say 5 to 6 years. I look at the ball that's played domestically. I look at the stars they actually have, the kind of ball that they play to, because I like it. You watch a German game, I'm happy to watch them play anybody. I think they're great. I'm unsure about Spain. I think Belgium, as I said, plays some good ball, and Brazil only because I don't have a real feel for it. But if someone said, who is your World Cup champion? I'm going Germany, and again, in no particular has it's gone through seeding. I just see them as a 1.
I have Germany as my favorite as well. Yeah, absolutely. Last year, the Confederations Cup, they took a B team. They rested their veterans and they won it.
Yeah,
it's incredible how deep they are, right? Yeah. And they've some of the old wood has been dropped now. They brought the youth through. Timo Werner up front, could be the Golden Boot winner. He's been great the last 2 years at Leipzig. The fact that they could drop a player like Leroy Sané of Man City, they dropped him this past week. I mean, he would walk into probably 31 of those 32 teams. I'm pretty sure he'd play in every other team or close to it anyway. He's that dynamic, that exciting. They dropped him. Sorry, he's not ready. I mean, my God, as an England fan, that just makes me want to cry.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's like Canada in hockey. You could have two teams.
Yeah, you could.
The guys who get cut
exactly.
are ridiculous.
Yeah, precisely. That's how good they are. And, their draw, they would go through potentially England or Colombia, perhaps, in the quarterfinals, Spain in the semis. And Spain, I only dismissed them somewhat. They are back. I really think they are. Yeah, they're playing great football right now. The best goalkeeper in world football, and David De Gea. The defense is just rock solid. And up front and going forward, they have some creativity. Isco could be a star of this tournament. He's really grown into himself since the last World Cup. Diego Costa, if he keeps his mind on the game.
Basically, because I talked about when they were great and then they've gone. So the cycle has come full circle.
I think so. I think last time around in the World Cup, Del Bosque kept too much faith rewarding the guys that got him the 2 European Cups and the World Cup, right? And you understand why he'd do that. It's too much loyalty. They've now gone away. And he's got these new kids coming through with that veteran core still. Ramos is still there, of course. Iniesta's still there. Koke's, in his prime. So to me, they're frightening, and people are dismissing them. But they could be.
No, I know you feel the whole thing out, but from let's just say the four, so the semis.
Right.
Who do you have in the semis?
Yeah, it's kind of boring. I have France against Brazil. And I have Spain, Germany. I know that I'm not taking any dark horse there, but I just don't see it in this World Cup. If France can keep their heads, they're going to be very, very hard to beat at the moment.
Where does Belgium fall for you?
Man, they are the team that could be great or they could implode. There's always already ruminations of some issues in the locker room between the coach and the star player, Kevin De Bruyne, not getting on too well. There's issues between De Bruyne and Eden Hazard. So already you're hearing this little bit of infighting, and it wouldn't be the first time that they kind of disappointed at the last World Cup. This is their golden generation, man. I'm with you, player for player. That it's hard to see a better team, or they're certainly in the top handful of teams this World Cup.
You know what's funny? Here's my impression of every Saturday as I'm sitting there and usually getting angry at stuff. But very often, if I'm in another room while the game's going on, all I hear is this, De Bruyne up! Because
he's incredible.
He's in every scoring play. He's either just missing the goal, hitting the post, or scoring. Like it really, he's unbelievable.
I have them playing Brazil in the quarterfinals, which is where the problem begins, right? But you're right. De Bruyne is, and he's fun to watch. He's a real decent guy. Apparently, doesn't look like your typical greasy footballer, right? He looks like Prince Harry,
Yeah, that's
He's got that red tinge to his hair,
right,
the big bright cheeks, man. Yeah. But I don't know if anyone in world football can pick a pass better than him. Yeah. He's incredible. Just fun to watch.
You mentioned Timo Werner for Germany as top goal scorer. Anybody else you have in that category? Because on Sports Interaction, Lionel Messi is the favorite to win it. Followed by Neymar and Cristiano Ronaldo's in the top 3, top 4. Right now, Werner is 15-1 to win it. He is number 5.
Is he really? Yeah, he's the favorite.
So it's pretty good. No,
he's not the favorite. 5th overall.
Yeah, he's 5th.
Who's first? Sorry,
Messi. Yeah.
Really? Yeah. Well, this is Messi. This is his last World Cup, right?
Yeah.
It's his chance to really make some noise.
It's all about goals, though.
Yeah, of course it is.
Gotta score those goals.
And Messi's had good World Cups in the past, let down by his teammates. He's got a good team now. They're not in the handful of favourites, perhaps in my mind, but they could go a long way. Obviously, with Messi. Neymar, if he's healthy, will score a lot of goals. And I mentioned before that Group A, how weak it is. Often you see far more goals in the group phase. Once the knockout phase begins, they tighten up. You see 1-0s, 1-1. So a team like Uruguay I mentioned before, and Edison Cavani and Luis Suarez can just go to town on those other teams. So if you want a Golden Boot winner, I think one of those two players could well be the man.
Cavani, 24-1.
That is good. I would put
really
a buck on that.
Yeah.
Or more.
Well, I'm doing it right now.
Do
it. Here's one name I always enjoy too. Like there are certain names that sound German. For English-speaking people, when you hear a certain name, it's like, oh, that's a German. Schweinsteiger. Like, I mean,
Bastian Schweinsteiger.
It's like hands up.
You can't say it quietly, can you?
No, you can't.
No. Schweinsteiger. Right? There's no other way to get
scary.
around it. Too bad he's not there now, right?
It doesn't matter if you can play. Oh, I'm going to play. I don't know. crossword puzzle. Who's your partner? Schweinsteiger.
He's in Chicago, right? He's
Yeah,
in MLS,
yeah,
isn't
right.
he? Okay,
Yeah.
he was.
Well, it's like too bad the Dutch on there goes Bas Dost, right? One of my favorite names too, right? Again, you can't say it quietly. It's Bas Dost.
It's like a Rammstein song. That is. Oh, now I do want to get to one thing where we've had talk of the CPL. So Scott Mitchell's been in, David's come in and talked about it, and you heard me very often. I always sort of wax about domestic leagues, and so some aren't as strong as others. You go to Ireland, look, me people are from there. I don't know if I can think about it, and I don't really know the teams. I'm obviously with the Premiership in Scotland, but they also are up against it in terms of the monies and the kinds of players and so on. Even if you're a Celtic or a Ranger fan, but now that Canada's doing this, and you've seen the popularity in both. MLS with what we see at TFC, and of course it's always been strong in Vancouver. The West Coast has always had a real feel for it. I think this is the right direction. I have a good now. Look, I'm not talking about ratings or gate or maybe necessarily the number of teams but I think quality will eventually come with what you do, and I'm really thinking that the blueprint they have is a good one. I'm excited for this.
When it was first rumored it's going to happen, I was cynical at first. I'll be honest. Then I spoke to Paul Byrne and some people involved, and now I'm so excited about this league and the potential. It's what every nation needs, a domestic professional league. You have to have a pathway for players to make that next step. And seeing all these clubs being announced the last number of weeks.
Winnipeg just the other day.
Yeah, exactly.
Valor
the
FC,
Valor, some great names, great crest. There's a real buzz around these teams. I was at the York 9. The first one they announced a few weeks back. It was slick. It was professional. These people know what they're doing, and there'll be growing pains, and they have ambitions. But at first, they're going to be fighting it because you got to get the fans in the stands, and they're very, very. They're aiming low to start with, but their ambitions are very, very high. And I think you're absolutely right. It's the only way to go, and I think it will be a success. Stick with it. These owners understand they're going to probably lose money, I imagine, the first couple of years, but in time they'll find a way. Look at England and real football nations. You have the top leagues, Premier League, whatever. Below that, you got this tier of other leagues and small local teams that do very well. They're sustainable. You don't need 50,000 people at the game. You can pull in 10, 11,000 and have a sustainable franchise, right? So I think it's great. It's an alternative to Toronto FC or Vancouver or Montreal. It makes it a real national feel, a football culture. And with perhaps World Cup games coming here in 2026, we'll find out next Thursday. A week to
Are we winning that
Wednesday.
Do you think there's a shot?
That bid?
Is there a shot?
I'm going to be there actually in Moscow for it.
Hey.
Yeah.
Well, look at you all of a sudden.
But I leave. You know what's typical of Mike? This is my career, right? I leave the day the World Cup kicks off. It's like, what have I done? Come on. But it'll be a good trip. But
he'll be at the airport, and they're like, "You're leaving?"
I've got.
I know. What are you doing? You're an idiot.
I got pies in the oven. I got pies in the oven.
I forgot to tell them. But so the two bids, Morocco and the United bid, which is Canada, Mexico, and the USA. When it first announced, we were all saying, well, it's a shoo-in, right? The United bid for sure. Morocco, give me a break. But as time's gone on, the Moroccan bids gain momentum. There's a real, you may have heard of this, an anti-Trump sentiment around the world right now, which is being costing potentially votes. Yes. But the last number of weeks, I felt better and better about the United bid. Last week, the evaluation committee came out with their report looking at the bids and grading the bids. And the United bid had 4 out of 5 average grading, which is extremely high. The Moroccan bid at 2.7 out of 5.
But the countries vote individually.
Yeah, that's the thing,
That's
right?
the tough part.
Yeah, but when Trump comes out a few weeks back and goes, I hope that those nations we offer support to will help us out in this bidding.
Well, he's not going to be the president when it happens.
True.
That's true as well, right?
Yeah.
But I think United bid should win it. It is by far the better bid for world football as far as bringing money into it. And it's the first 48-team World Cup too, don't forget, right? So,
okay, so ideally, say the United bid wins it, and there are games in Canada. Are we just thinking that it's Toronto, Vancouver, Toronto, Edmonton?
There's 3 bid cities in Canada: Edmonton, Toronto, and Montreal.
Montreal, very
good. Montreal. Vancouver didn't submit a bid.
That's right.
Didn't want it.
They
And
were
the NDP
late on
government
it too.
said no, can't afford it, which is short-sighted. in my
Yeah,
What a
opinion.
mistake.
and remember that.
They'll
right?
regret
Yeah.
that.
Election day today, everybody.
Hey.
Vancouver.
So, they could potentially remove one of those cities, but I think there'll be games in all of them. Probably
Yeah.
more games in Toronto and Montreal, maybe a couple in Edmonton.
Right.
But let's hope they get the bid because it should win.
Yeah, first
Nothing
things
against
first,
Morocco.
right? Yeah.
Let's get there. But I know for a fact the United bid are a bit nervous about this because it's not
Canada would qualify
guarantee.
then.
Well, that hasn't been announced yet. You would think so, right? But they haven't announced the qualifying process. You would think they
that's
have to
interesting, yeah.
they have to give the bidding the host nation
Yeah.
of C. But FIFA is saying we will discuss that nearer the time.
Oh yeah, FIFA's going to have a discussion.
But regardless, 48 teams, they should qualify though, right?
Whoa, is he in the meetings?
See, I'd be awesome as
Mike,
the director
it's
of FIFA.
a new FIFA. It's new
Yeah.
FIFA. It's transparent.
Oh
now.
yeah, sure it is.
It
Huge
sure is.
transparency.
Gianni Infantino
Yeah,
says
that's
so,
right.
so you have to believe him.
I got to get a job with them. That or the IOC. I would be so easily bought. You're going to give me my own strip joint? Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
sure. All right, done. What do you want?
All of a sudden, Guyana is in the running. What? Guyana? Before we let you go, because it just flies by. It totally flies by. The real pies. Let's talk about
Real pies.
Yeah,
Doing very well, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, by the way, I'm
yeah.
all out, so I
Oh,
got
yeah.
to
Hey,
make
man,
another order
I'll
for
hook you up. I'll
Yeah,
hook you up.
No.
We're all set for phase 2. We've got brand new packaging boxes next
Oh.
month or so, and then we start hitting the pavement and getting these pies in
Wow.
more stores. Right now, we're just in the one store right now in East York.
Yeah.
But it's doing well. But over the next few months, we hope to take over.
Well, that's
and,
tremendous. The real
then
pies
be bought out by
Inc.
Loblaws for $10 million.
Yeah,
next
and then you
year.
can stay for the World Cup. That's
Yeah,
what
exactly.
There. It's like that's a good thing.
I'll bid for the World Cup.
Yeah, there
East
you
York.
go. There you go. What's the biggest seller? Because the chicken curried one is the
Balti, that's my favorite. Yeah,
that's
it
mine.
does very well. That and
Yeah.
the chicken pot pie, the two biggest
That's-
sellers.
yeah, that's
Steak and
what I-
cheese is pretty popular as well. Gotta say, I mean, how can it not be? Steak and cheese?
Yeah, steak and cheese. Yeah.
Come on, can't go wrong with that, can you?
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks so much for coming in today.
Hey, always a pleasure, guys.
Always appreciate it.
What? We just become best friends? Yep.